What do Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, a show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports happenings of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong Falcons and Georgia fan, and just all-around sports fanatic. So, today what I want to talk about is some moves that have been made by the Falcons since the NFL draft. That includes undrafted free agents, as well as big signings, and a couple of moves that we've let some people go. So, let's start off with the biggest news today. Grady Jarrett extended 3 years, $17 million per year, with about $34.5 million of that guaranteed automatically. Love this move for the Falcons. We're going to have a lot of cap space next year, and I just really think that he is going to be the anchor on our defensive line for the remainder of his career. He's been our best player on defense by far. So I can't wait to see what he does with the remainder of his career as a Falcon, especially now that we have I can't say the guy's name, but I'm going to learn it, this new edge out of Penn State to help him on the line. I think it's going to be a great combo this year. So really happy to have him. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, we did exercise the fifth-year option on Chris Lindstrom, our right guard. So he will be with us for the foreseeable future, most likely. $13.2 million guaranteed next year. And I do look for the Falcons to get a contract extension for him, probably because of his age and wanting to get the most out of him in his prime. 4 to 5 years, somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million per year. So, look for that for about a $50 to $60 million contract, 30 or 40 million guaranteed coming out sometime in the middle towards the end of next year. I'm really happy about that. Conversely, the guy who was also taken in the same draft, Greg Mcgarrity, we are not extending him. We declined his fifth-year option. I agree with this decision. Could we re-sign him at the end of the year? Yes, but we're not going to have to pay him $13.2 million to do it. He's a guy that if we do re-sign, it would be somewhere between a 1 to 3 year contract for anywhere from $2 to $5 million per year. If he breaks out this year and he's really good, I still don't think he's worth more than about $5 to $8 million per year for a 2 to 3 year contract at most. I wouldn't want to be tied to him for a long period of time just based on the fact that he hasn't picked up the game very well in his first 3 years, and I'm not confident that he's going to pick it up this year either. Other big news, we released Mike Davis. I thought this might happen, and unfortunately it actually happened before my last video dropped, even though I mentioned that he was going to be a rotational component in the backfield. So now you're left with Damien Williams, Cordarrelle Patterson, Tyler Algier, the new running back from BYU, and Quadriolison. Now, I think Cordarrelle moves back more to wide receiver. He'll probably still see some snaps at running back, but he's getting up there in years, and we really don't need to waste his talent at running back when we have a few guys that can pick up the slack. I do look for this to eventually be the Tyler Algier job now that we took him in the 5th round, but Damien Williams should be our starting running back out of the backfield to start with. This move does save $2.5 million to help us sign rookies, which we desperately needed. Now, moving on. Undrafted free agents. Going to really quickly run through them. Guys that I like and guys that I'm just kind of like, probably going to be practice squad players. But we have about 3 to 5 places that are reasonably available after looking at all of the rookies that we actually spent draft capital on versus guys that we've signed as undrafted free agents and our general roster from the previous year. So we'll see what happens, but I do think we have about 3 to 5 spots that could potentially be filled, and you have many more than that competing for those spots. Wide receiver, we have 3 guys. We have Jared Bernhardt out of Ferris State, previously Maryland lacrosse. Kind of a weird gadget player. He can do a lot of things, but I'm not sure he's going to do any of them particularly well. Tyshawn James out of Central Connecticut, and the guy that I'm really excited about, Stanley Berryhill out of Arizona, a 2021 Pac-12 first team All-American for all-purpose yards. So he was a great receiver, a great punt returner, and he had a couple of carries mixed in there as well. I do look for him to be a guy that finds his way to the special team squad, probably be our 6th or 7th receiver if we go with that many on the roster. And again, the Falcons, I think, need to rotate every single receiver that we have on the roster into the mix at some point in the season, because I don't think any of them outside of Drake London are going to be quality wide receiver 2 or 3s. So we just need to rotate through and figure out who that guy is going to be, who we're going to have for depth pieces. Auden Tate is going to be okay from former Cincinnati Bengal, as well as Olamide Zaccheaus. But I'm not sold on either of them as wide receiver 2 or 3. So I like Barry Hill a lot just because of his production and getting to see a couple of his plays, a couple of his returns in some of his highlights today. Bernhardt, again, a weird gadget player. He was a quarterback, he was a running back, he was a lacrosse player. I don't know what to make of him. At 6'1", 195 pounds, he's a little undersized overall, so I don't know what to make of him on that. I really couldn't find a lot of information on James out of Central Connecticut. I wish I could find a little bit more. I just know he's 6'3", 210 pounds. We'll see what the preseason holds for him. Tight end. We did pick up Leroy Watson out of UTSA. Big 6'5", 275-pound tight end. Never had more than 14 receptions in a single season. He's going to be a blocking tight end. And I don't look for him to make the final roster. We've already got 3 guys, if you include the UGA pickup in the 6th round. So I don't think we're going to end up needing that because we already got Ferkser and Pitts at tight end as well. So 3 guys on the roster is probably all we need to start the season. He might be a fine blocking tight end backup just to have on the practice squad, but I don't look for him to make the final roster. The other guy that we picked up is Tyler Vrabel, who is Mike Vrabel's son, the head coach of Tennessee Titans. I think this is a little more of a kind of political move or just, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, because his tape is not super impressive. He's a right tackle, 307 pounds, I think 6'5", 307 pounds. He looks big on the field when you watch his Boston College footage, and I had the pleasure of watching a little bit of the Boston College and Notre Dame highlights, and I was really keying in on him because Notre Dame's probably the best team they played all year. Mixed bag overall. So he had a couple of really good blocks against great edge rushers, and then he completely misses them 2 or 3 plays later. So I don't know what to make of him. He's very inconsistent. I don't think he makes the final roster. I think we need a lot more consistency. I would rather have Jalen Mayfield, who I at least know has a year of experience under his belt at that position, than a guy who looked like that at Boston College against Notre Dame. I don't trust that right now. But again, maybe he turns into something. On defense, we took 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 1 outside, 2 inside, a corner, and 2 safeties. So, defensive line, I do think one of these guys will make our 52-man roster. Timmy Horn out of Kansas State, Bryce Rogers out of UC Davis, and Derek Tangelo out of Penn State. Let's start with Horn. 321 pounds, 6'5", 2 sacks, 20 tackles this past season. Not super fast. I didn't see anything that I didn't like, but I'm just so used to watching Jordan Davis this past year. It's just so different to watch a true powerful beast of a man pushing through nose tackle and then watching everybody else. And to me, Horn is just everybody else. I don't think there's anything that makes him stand out particularly, but he could be an okay guy to fill that spot. Bryce Rogers, UC Davis, 6'2", 309, a little undersized there. He had 51 tackles, 4.5 sacks. I did get to see all 4.5 of them on some highlights. 2.5 of them, he just was in the right place at the right time. He is slow. There is no acceleration off the line. It's hard to watch him, actually. I kind of don't want him to make the roster, but we'll see what happens. He was rated towards the back end of all of the defensive linemen who were going in the draft this year. So I'm just not excited about him. The guy that I'm a little more excited about is Derek Tangelo. He had a 4.94 40 time, 6'2", 308 pounds. So again, a little undersized. He had 29 tackles, 2 sacks, and he just looks agile. He was able to find gaps on either side of the guard on either side of the guard. He looked good most of the time. Now, what I tend to see or what I tend to hear when I look at just reviews of him is that he doesn't have a lot of acceleration, but he has great hands and great technique. Now, that doesn't always translate into the NFL. A lot of times you need technique and you need the actual physical component. I think he's a little lacking in physical, but I do think he would be the best candidate to make the roster. As far as linebackers go, you have, I am going to struggle with this, Kwoni Ding out of California. He's an outside linebacker, 6'6", 240 pounds. A little strange frame. Biggest knock on him: knocked out almost completely for 2020, knocked out almost completely for 2021 with 2 separate soft tissue injuries. I don't think he's going to make the roster just because he's a weird athletic build, and then he also is, I'm going to go ahead and say, injury prone. Now, could he be better once he gets professional coaching and once he goes through OTAs and preseason? Yes, certainly. But just a kind of a weird player right now. I don't know if he's going to make the final roster. A guy that I'm much more excited about, and I'm going to struggle with this name too, Kanei Mauga, USC Trojan. He is 6'2", 245 pounds, a little more prototypical. 92 tackles, 1 sack. He is explosive. Just watching his highlights, it was amazing to see him just break off the line and go and put pressure on the quarterback. And then he also had a couple of really good coverage plays as well that I saw. Now, again, I don't have time to watch all of his plays and watch every game, but what I gather from professionals who have looked at his tape is that he does have that ability, highly inconsistent. It doesn't show up every single play. So, again, he might be a good substitutional piece. You know, somebody to give a Beckety a little bit of a break, or, you know, potentially not Deion Sanders, Deion Jones a little bit of a break. But again, you know, a guy that I think has potential to make that roster. Another guy, Nate Landmann out of Colorado, 6'3", 235 pounds. His big deal is he also had soft tissue injuries, this time to the ankle. He missed 5 of his senior year games at Colorado, and Colorado actually didn't have a single player taken in the draft this year. They do have several undrafted free agents though. Injury concern there. I don't know what's going to end up happening with him, but again, a guy that could have some potential, but we're just going to have to wait and see. Other guys, talking about corners and safeties. We have the only corner, Matt Hankins. I am big on this guy. He's out of Iowa, 6'1", little undersized at 185 pounds. I'd like to see him more like 5'11", 195 pounds would be preferred, but can't shrink him at all. But I'd like to get him buffed up a little bit. Biggest concern for him, he was injured for most of this past season. However, prior to the injury, he had 5 passes defended. He had 3 sacks, and these were in his senior year. I assume he would have had at least 2 or 3 interceptions, which is on par with what he did in prior seasons. But again, injury is probably what knocked him out of the draft. I think he would have been a 5th, 6th, or 7th round pick had that not happened, because his tape is absolutely electric. And again, Iowa produces great linemen and pretty good defensive players and tight ends. So I like him a lot. I think he does make it because corner is usually a position of high depth. So 2 safeties as well. Brad Hawkins out of Michigan and Trey Webb out of Montana State. Trey Webb, 6 foot tall, 202 pounds. I got nothing to say on him. I couldn't find tape. I couldn't find information. I really couldn't find anything on this guy. I'd like to see him play in the preseason, but again, without having that information, I can't make a judgment call. Brad Hawkins, 60 tackles, 4 passes defended. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. Again, he did play on a really high-powered Michigan defense this past year, and a couple of his highlight plays look really good, particularly against Ohio State and some other stiff competition, Michigan State, Ohio State. Some of these teams he looked really, really good against. So, guys that I think end up making the team. Stanley Berryhill, the inside linebacker Mauga, Hankins corner, Hawkins safety, and Tangelo defensive tackle. But if you have different thoughts, or if you don't like some of the moves, if you do like some of the moves that we make, if you think we've got other moves yet to make, please comment down below, like the video, consider subscribing, really going to help the channel out. But until next time, rise up.